The field of emergency communications. Stephanie loves the outdoors as evidenced by her love of running, fishing, archery, and beach glass hunting. Stephanie is here to talk to us about Smart911, how creating an account assists the EMS teams that respond to your home in an emergency. In addition, Stephanie will give us an overview of the Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center and what happens when a 911 call is dispatched. Please welcome Stephanie Skipworth.
Thank you, Beth. So we'll start right into this. What is Smart911? Smart911 is a service that 911 centers can sign up for, and we use it for multiple different things. Our primary thing that we use it for is what we're talking about today. Having it available that residents can sign up for this service and can provide as much or as little information as they want. So when they call us in particular, if you're in our service area, we get that information from your phone. It does have some limitations, which I'll go into, but the nice thing about it is if you are in an area that does have Smart911 software, anywhere in the nation, and you call from your registered device, they will have that same access to that information. All right, so for Smart911, there's a couple different ways you can get it, either through the smart911.com website, which I'll kind of walk you through my profile here in a little bit, or you can download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play. It's an online tool that you can create a household safety profile. So for instance, for myself, it's just my husband and I have created an account that has registered both of our cell phone devices. And I have put information in there to include medical information, preferred hospitals, what kind of cars we drive, my beloved pets. So if there's ever a fire at my house and I have to call, the fire department knows how many pets are in that house. Something additional for me being in law enforcement, I have a gun safe that's very heavy and it's on the second floor of my home. You can do anything from adding photos to blueprints of your house. So that's a note that I want in my profile that if there's a fire, I don't want the firefighters under that safe. Why you should create a Smart911 profile. It's free. It's a free service that is provided to you. Everything is private and secure. So you are in complete control of all of the data that goes into that, no matter how much or how little you wish to provide. It is only accessed when you call 911. So a 911 center can't try to find somebody by trying to get into their account. The only way we have access to that data is if your registered device, I'm going to keep saying your registered device, calls 911, then that information will become available to us. I say your registered device because let's say you register your household, your spouse's cell phones, and your house catches fire and you run out and you call from a neighbor's home phone. That's not going to give us the information from your account because it has to be from your registered device. So we recommend that if you have a home phone, cell phone, multiple cell phones in a home, you're registering all those phone numbers, and I'll kind of walk you through that. It saves time in an emergency. So it gives us crucial medical information, especially if you're at a point where you're calling 911 and can't necessarily give us all that information, whether it be because you're a little panicked because of the situation, not thinking clearly, or if there's a true medical emergency where you can't give us that information. It does give us a little bit of enhanced location information. The 911 system's very limited. We get a general idea of where people are when they call from their cell phone. This Smart911 technology actually opens up all of your location apps on your phone. That includes Uber. So it gives us a more pinpointed location, again, in those instances where you're not able to talk to us. When you call from a registered device, this is very similar to what we see on our screen here in the communication center through our software. So again, it's all confidential until you call 911. So I know that if Rebecca calls, I know that I'm going to have to use a TTY or a teletype for the deaf machine because she is deaf. That just kind of gives us a little bit of information for that. Some other typical things we have, particularly with some special needs children, we've got some families that have registered their special needs children. Let's say if they're autistic, nonverbal, has certain things that will escalate a situation, make them not trust the police, things that calm them down, places they like to go, that kind of stuff. For our elderly population, if somebody's known to wander away from a home and they like to go to a particular area, again, that's the kind of information that we want into these profiles. Things that you can include, I kind of already went over: details about your home, details about your family members, pets, medical conditions, and other special needs. This also includes, you can add emergency contact information. So that's been very beneficial in a couple instances where if someone's have a medical emergency, we have that emergency contact information that we can make those phone calls based off of that profile. Another nice feature about Smart911 is you can opt in for community alerts. So you'll see that when I go through my profile, you can select what alerts you get. So Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center has a set plan set up that if a specific weather event moves into a predefined boundary, those people who are signing up for Smart911 get an automatic notification. So if I'm a Dublin resident and I'm living in Dublin, I've signed up for Smart911 and there's a tornado warning, as soon as that tornado warning hits that predefined area, it's sending whatever alert I chose to send to my phone. That can be a phone call, a text message, an email. You get to pick all of that. We also utilize it for community announcements. So traffic alerts, let's say there's a bad accident on 270 and 270 eastbound is shut down just west of Sawmill, we can push that out. Or if there's a safety alert. So if there's some sort of safety issue for a specific neighborhood, we also utilize this for that. Things to know about Smart911, it does not replace 911 calls. It's just an additional tool for us to utilize in the event of an emergency to give us a little bit extra information. Like I said, if you call from a device that's not registered, as I use in that example, calling from your neighbor's phone, we're not going to get that information. Creation of the profile may only be done through the website or the app, and the member must have an email address in order to create their profile. This is important because every 6 months, Smart911 will send an email to that registered email address asking for validation of the account, any updates. If that email is not responded to and the account's not logged into, Smart911 deletes the profile. So it's part of that privacy thing. So if you have somebody that wants a Smart911 profile but may not have an email address, we recommend a trusted family member that would have access to that could get them set up for that. So again, you can go to smart911.com, which I'm going to show you here in just a moment, or through your phone, you can download it. I actually have the app on my phone as well, and it's pretty neat because those alerts do pop up for the weather events, in particular with us going into spring weather here. So any questions so far just on what it is and kind of what the limitations of it are? Okay.
Can you, Steph, can you put in the chat maybe the web page, the URL for that, for the 911? That would be helpful because I didn't have a chance to write it down. I want to use it for some of my clients. I think it's really cool.
Yep, not a problem. All right. Okay, so if you go to www.smart911.com, if you're a new user and you're trying to sign up and start a new account, that's where you're going to do is the sign up now. Once you go there, it's going to ask for basic information. There you'll see you'll need your email address, a user ID. I do recommend using your email as well. We all know in today's day and age, there's a lot of different things you have to sign up for, and sometimes it's just easier if you have your email address for that. You'll have to choose whether it's a mobile phone or a landline. That includes VoIP, which is, say you have Time Warner cable, something like that, Spectrum. That's going to be your VoIP or cable. That's important to us because some of the alerts that we send is dependent on whether it's considered a landline or a mobile phone. You can also choose to get profile update reminders on your phone. So I have that on mine. So if I happen to miss the email buried in all the junk mail that I typically get, I do have that. So we will go back and we'll log into my account. Okay, so as with everything right now, you'll see the COVID stuff. If I wanted to answer COVID-19 questions, quarantine, health status, that is available through there. Again, this is all private. This is my profile. Go ahead.
I'm not seeing your screen. Are you?
Oh, here we go. All right, can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So this is my Smart911 profile. You'll see a couple different things on here, how far you've gone into your profile, meaning how much information you've put into it. Again, you can put as little or as much as you want. It's broken down into household. So this is myself and my husband's information. If you go into each of these, you can then add additional information. You can add photos. I've got my place of employment. So I've got my place of employment and all that stuff in there. So if something happens and I need to be gotten a hold of and my husband can't get a hold of me because of an emergency, if he calls 911 from his registered device, then they know that I'm working here at the police department. If I go back here, you'll also notice that it asks to edit details and medical information. So for instance, I have an allergy to certain medications. That's kind of information that we would want to put in here. And again, you can put as little or as much as you want into that. But as you see, there's a very long list of everything that you want to include in there. Something else that we do recommend to some of our community members as well, even though you have to use English to put this information into the website, we know that Dublin's a very diverse population, and there is some people that may not speak very good English. They may have limited English, or maybe a child in the home has to interpret for them. That's good information for us to have, including what language they speak. That way, if they call 911, we can get an interpreter on the line quicker. Some of the other information that you can include in here, I mentioned my house. So I've got additional location information. Let's say, for instance, the area I live in is a new build subdivision and it's not always on GPS and that kind of stuff. I've put additional information. So if I have an emergency, they can get to my home quicker. I'm on propane. I think that's important for firefighters to know if there's a problem. You can, again, put as little or as much in here as you want. I've got the color of my home, what the exterior of it is. So if for some reason I can't give that information and they're having a hard time finding my home for some reason, I've got that information in there. Emergency contacts. So again, I included my husband. Preferred providers. If you have a specific hospital that you want to go to because your doctor's at that hospital, you can include that in there. I mentioned my pets. I've got my pets listed here, and then any vehicles that my husband and I drive. That way they have that information as well. When we were talking about the alerts, these are those community notifications. So because I work for Northwest Regional and I am a supervisor, I want to know what those emergency communications are. So you'll notice I've selected text, voice, and email to get those. And then the non-emergency and severe weather notifications, I've asked for a text for all of our areas. So you'll notice there, any area that we service, which I'll go over here in just a second, I'm able to get those alerts. Smart911 is used by our dispatch center. I believe Grove City now also has it. And then there's several counties, Butler County down near Cincinnati, Guernsey County, if you ever go into Southeast Ohio, and there's multiple others nationwide that have it. So not every 911 center has it, but if you happen to be driving through an area that has it and you call 911 from that registered device, they will have access to that data. So with that, is there any questions over the Smart911 app or what it is or how to sign up for it?
If I add my husband on mine, his information, he's got a cell phone too. How does he get it? I mean, does he have to download the app and will the two phones talk to each other, or does he have to put in all the information again?
What'll happen is when you create the account, if you add his phone number in there, it will send him a confirmation, either text or email, I forget which one, that they then have to answer to, and they will need to download that app if they want to access stuff on it. You don't necessarily have to download the app to have the information available when you call. The app comes into play if you're looking at some of those severe weather notifications and stuff, and if you're wanting to update it from your phone. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Does Dublin have this, or is it coming soon?
We do have it. We currently have it. We've had it for a little over a year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a question. I live out of county but work for the city of Dublin and do spend a lot of time in the city. Would it be wise for me to sign up, or is it more for where you live? Most definitely, if you work in the city of Dublin and there's a possibility you're going to have to call 911, I would definitely recommend it. And even just for that larger benefit of, even if you're outside of our area and you are in an area that does have it, then they'll have access to that information as well. So I've got a question. If the service covers Plain City, not the actual city of Plain City. There are some outlying areas of Plain City that if the phone call came to the Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center, whichever cell phone tower it hits off of, so out off the area like 33 Post Road near Costco, that type of area, if it came to our agency, we would get that data. However, once we transfer it over to Union County, they would not have access to that.
And I think too, Stephanie, I hope this is accurate. If you're using that registered device, are they going to be able to pinpoint where you are? You're not necessarily at your home, but you might be in your vehicle. You might be at the park. It's the device.
Yes.
That's what's so important.
Yeah, it will give us that enhanced location data, like I mentioned, because it's using all of your location information off of your phone versus a very old technology that just calling 911 regularly does. Now we would have that additional information of if we knew that that person calling from the registered device was in trouble and we've checked the area that we believe that phone is at, then we have access to that other information to go start checking those other places, looking for those registered vehicles, going to that home, to that place of employment, and trying to go from there. Is there a reason Smart911 is not widespread through all counties or 911 centers? It is a service that we have to pay for, so that's going to vary from 911 to 911 center. More 911 centers seem to be getting access to it, but it is a software that we do have to purchase and subscribe to every year to have that information.
Great questions. I think we'll transition then to the overview, and if you still have questions, we can address those.
Okay, let me switch over here. Bear with me, I'm not a usual Zoom user here, so can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right, so as I mentioned, we're Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center, or NREC. We are physically located in the city of Dublin in the second story of the Dublin Police Department. We started taking on other agencies, I believe it was around 2013, and we are all still City of Dublin employees, but we wanted to represent all of our partners that we dispatch for. So being the northwest quadrant of the county, we came up with the Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center. Kind of just some of the stuff we'll talk about, what our hiring process looks like, what our training is, and the components of our job, as well as some of the extra stuff that we do while we're on duty, and then we'll have time for some questions after that. So the Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center is staffed 24/7, 365. That's nights, weekends, holidays, and overtime. Unlike the corporate world or service industry, unfortunately, we do have set minimums. So if somebody has to be off for whatever reason, a family emergency, sick leave, something like that, we can't just go below because we have an important function that we do serve for our communities and our responders. So there is overtime involved. Typically, our communications technicians work 5 8-hour shifts per week with 2 consecutive days off. So they know at the end of the year after shift bid that they'll be working day shift for the following year with, say, Thursday, Friday off. So they have that set schedule. They are part of the Fraternal Order of Police Ohio Labor Council, so they are union. Our training program is about 20 weeks. Our job is very important, and we have a lot of different aspects that we have to learn. We want to make sure that the person that we're putting behind that console is confident and can provide that service to our communities and our responders. There is a 1-year probationary from the date of hire, which means within that first year, they go through a lot of additional mentorship training, making sure that they've got what they need to be a successful telecommunicator. And then we have ongoing continued education throughout the year. So I know I mentioned our severe weather alerts. We actually just did some severe weather training, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later on and why that's important to NREC. But we do that continued education to make sure they're staying up and current on the newest things in our career. So our hiring process is a little bit different from traditional hiring processes. As you can see, it's pretty lengthy. It takes approximately 6 months for us to get someone fully hired. We make them sit through an information session, which is a little bit like this, just a little bit more in depth, where we talk about what it is to be a telecommunicator, what we run into, what we look for. They then participate in a panel interview. Then they draw an eligibility list from that. We conduct very thorough backgrounds that goes all the way back into high school and check up on all that. Then there's a final interview with the chief of police, then a conditional offer based on passing a drug test. We do a psychological test to make sure that they're a good fit for our career. Then our training program, and then our probationary period. Our training program has 5 phases. They have approximately 5 weeks in a classroom. This is where they learn the geography of the areas that we dispatch for. This is where they learn their computer-aided dispatching, or CAD. It's the system we put all of the information into. It tells us who to send and whose agency they belong to. And they get all of their certifications. So you'll see from the photos there, we do CPR and AED certifications. So that's part of that certification. Then they move on to 6 weeks of call taking, where they're sitting in the room with a trainer who is listening to every single thing that they do and watching everything they do to make sure that they are getting the help that's needed. Then they move on to a fire and EMS dispatching, where they do straight fire EMS dispatch, then police. And then they have 3 weeks of independent, where their trainer's still there side by side listening to everything they do for 3 weeks, just to make sure that they've got it down before we release them out onto their own. Some of the skills and competencies we look for in a telecommunicator is listening skills. Listening skills is huge for us. Listening to background noise in phone calls, listening to what people are saying. As we know, there's different types of callers, and I'm not just talking about language barriers, but child caller, elderly caller, a caller who's experiencing a mental health crisis, hearing everything that they're saying. That's in addition to hearing radio traffic, listening to our responders in the room, listening to each other, multitasking. That picture there in the middle is actually when we went up and dispatched for Knox County after the Danville officer got shot and killed. You'll see all of those monitors that we're responsible for all the different systems. So that's where that multitasking really comes into play. Ability to make decisions. At NREC, we're huge on making decisions and not being a mother may I. Seconds count, and that's why our training program is so long. We really put a lot into our training program so we have good professional people sitting behind that chair that make the right decisions in the right amount of time to get services out. Teamwork. You know, our 911 center can go from dead silent 1 minute to all hands are on deck and everybody's working together. And that's, you know, regardless of what channel they're working or which community they're servicing for the day. If stuff goes bad, best example I can give you is the big tanker fire that Dublin had not too long ago that I'm sure all of you saw on the news. Everybody in that room pulled together and made sure that everybody had what they needed. Typing ability, technology is huge in our field. We do rely on our computers to tell us who to send, what to send. what information we get, et cetera. Kind of like the Smart911 is one of our newest technologies, so integrating that in. And customer service is huge for us. We're getting people who are calling us in their worst moments of their life. It might be the worst day of their life, and to us it might seem not so big of a deal, but we're here because when nobody knows who to call, they call the police department. So we want to make sure we provide that customer service and adaptability, because you never know what's going to happen. It can be a severe weather event where we lose some of our resources. It could be that unexpected event like the tanker fire. We always have to be able to adapt and overcome. Call taking basics. So the biggest question I've gotten when I've gone out and done talks is, what do you need when I call 911? The biggest and most important thing we need is where the help is needed. We need a specific location, address. If you're calling from a business or a school or something like that, that specific location within that location. So for instance, I'm at Dublin Kaufman High School and I'm in classroom 132 at door B. It's very specific information to get them in there very quickly. What's going on? Do you need police? Do you need fire? Do you need medical? And then the typical who's involved, when did it happen, how did it happen, and hazards. That's hazards for you and that's hazards for my responders. Sometimes there's a medical emergency, but there's a bigger issue at hand where it may be a crime of violence and the person that did that is still there on scene. I'm not going to send my medics in unprotected until my police officers can get there and get that situation under control. And the caller's name and phone number. Technology fails, stuff happens. We want to make sure we have that information. So if we need to call back, we do, or we can. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of the area that NREC answers calls for, and this is expanded out just a little bit with the addition of our other agencies. If you are traveling westbound on 270, from around 270 and 71 on the northwest side, down past 270 and Roberts, depending on where specifically you're at, if you call 911, you will most likely get Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center. Reason being is because cell phones are programmed to go to the closest agency that's been predefined by that area. So for instance, down on Roberts Road, Hilliard touches a lot of that area down there, and the majority of the calls for that area are ours, but we do get calls for the city of Columbus in that area as well. So they take a lot of that stat into account for the cell phone towers and where those calls go. To give you an idea as far as the east and west, since we took on Norwich Township, which is Hilliard, we answer out going towards Plain City now more and more, out along Amity Road, that area. And we're answering clear up against Ohio State on the east side just because of that upper Arlington area. So, there's a possibility if you call it 270 and Tuttle Crossing, depending on where you're calling from, that could either go to the city of Columbus or it could come to our center. But all of our communication centers are trained and have that information that if you give us that location, we can get you over to that agency very quickly, depending on what information you give. We do have language lines. So as I mentioned, if we have someone that is either non-English speaking or limited English speaking, we can still communicate with them. It does take a little bit longer, but we have direct access to that. And that's as well as our responders in the field. So they are able to communicate that way. TTY for deaf or hearing impaired, and text to 911. NREC does have text to 911. So if you're in a situation where you can't call 911, if you're in our service area, you can text 911, and that's simply putting 911 as your recipient, and then you can type out your message. There are severe limitations to the text to 911. Sometimes there's a delay. If there's a roaming issue, it might get stuck. It's not very quick. I know all of us have probably had that text message that pops up way after the fact. We also don't get good location information off of it. So if you're in a situation where you have to text 911, make sure you give us the location right away, because if nothing else, we can at least get someone there to that location to help. Types of calls that NREC handles, everything from non-emergency police calls to fire and EMS calls, 911, city services and utilities, and general information. With St. Patrick's Day coming up this coming week, We're getting all kinds of questions about the St. Patrick's Day reverse parade. Those of you who are familiar with the Dublin area memorial tournament, fireworks, that kind of stuff, we are a central point where people do call and get that type of information too. So as important as the 911 fire and police is, that's a little bit of that customer service of we answer all those other phone calls and point them in the right direction as well. I won't read through them, but you'll kind of get an idea of our how we've progressed as we've taken on other agencies. Hilliard Police Service started in January of 14. Upper Arlington Police started in January of 18. Upper Arlington Fire, October, and then most recently, Worthington Police and Fire. So 2020 was a little bit of an odd year with COVID. Our fire and EMS call load went up, but the other call loads kind of went down a little bit. So we're kind of curious to see how 2021 goes, but you'll notice we've been steadily going up. And I'll kind of just go through these quickly here. You'll see the increases in numbers as we go from year to year. And you'll notice that administrative phone line tends to go up. That's a lot of the non-emergency numbers needing other city services. So as far as fire departments go, we provide fire and EMS services to the cities of Hilliard, Upper Arlington, Worthington, and Dublin. So Dublin is Washington Township, Norwich Township is Hilliard, and Brown Township is serviced by Norwich Township. I've got a quick question here. How accurate is the cell phone locations you get from a cell tower? Is there a difference in location accuracy from Android or Apple phones? So quick and easiest answer is it depends on what phase that call comes in. So with 911, you get phase 1 information, which is just the tower and a general idea of where it hit off that tower. So for instance, the southeast side of that tower. Some phones will give us phase 2 information. Phase 2 information gives us a latitude and longitude, but it's only accurate up to within 500 meters. So that sounds like not a lot, but sometimes it is a lot. Prime example I can use is Emerald Parkway running parallel with 270. A 500 meter difference would make a huge difference with that. It also depends on what location services are turned on with inside that phone. So for instance, my cell phone, if I don't have a good signal here at work, I turn off the location or GPS service. If I were to call 911, it would give very limited information unless it's that Smart 911. Some of the older cell phones didn't have real good location technology. The newer ones do. So there's no easy answer, but I don't know that there's a difference between Android and Apple. Hopefully that answered that question. Any calls that come into our center that we're dispatching medics to, we do provide emergency medical dispatching to those calls. So this is an example of what we use for every single medic call we have. So the very 2 questions that we ask every single caller when they call in asking for medics is if the patient is conscious and if they're breathing normally. The reason we do this is because based on what information they give us, it dictates what equipment we send, what directions we give them, and we can walk people through everything from CPR to childbirth. Unfortunately, CPR runs have gone up quite a bit with drug overdoses, some of the COVID stuff, but we get a lot of labor calls because of Dublin Methodist Hospital. A lot of people try to drive themselves to the hospital, and I've got couple contexts. I've delivered a few babies on the side of 270 in the middle of the night. So it's pretty cool. But we have very structured instructions we give to each of those, and those are run through our Washington Township medical director. So we are giving very specific directions for those. And that can be everything, also including down to just simple bleeding control. So if you call 911, we can give you at least some direction until we get help there. Some other duties that our comm techs have within the center, I mentioned the tornadoes and severe weather. Dublin is very unique because Dublin sits in 3 counties. So Dublin sits in Union, Delaware, and Franklin County. So we set off our own tornado sirens. Typically, those are set off by the county emergency management agencies. Because we sit in 3 counties, we actually set off our own, and that is done from within our comm center. We also monitor cameras and control our temporary holding facility for the city of Dublin. We clerk and notarize, and we take bond after hours. There's the tornado sirens. The noon test every Wednesday at noon. That voice you're hearing is one of my communications technicians from our center. We also have a mobile command trailer that we take out to special events. If you've been to Irish Festival or Memorial Tournament, you may have seen it in the past. We also have a controller that sits in there as well, because we're in an area where we may need to evacuate a large number of people. Our communications technicians, we try to give them some additional duties so that they have some ownership of their dispatch centers. So one of our ancillary assignments is what I'm doing now, our public education talks. We do everything from safety city, safety town, teaching preschoolers how to dial 911, to programs with our partners, talks like this, getting some of that information out there regarding what information 911 gets when they call, how they can call 911, that kind of stuff. We have communications technicians that take care of our CAD, or that computer aided dispatch. That's what tells us where to send people. Our radio programming. Our training officers are all dispatchers within the center who have been doing the job. Our incident dispatch team, I mentioned that trailer earlier. Not only do we use it for special events, but if there's a large incident such as that tanker fire, we actually have dispatchers that can take a trailer out to the scene and dispatch from there. We've got accreditation and records retention stuff that we do, jail inspections, and making sure our phone system's up to date, so when someone calls, we get them to the right place. And there's that in the upper left-hand corner, that's our instant dispatch trailer, and some photos of inside of it. The lower right-hand corner, you'll notice he's looking at a weather map. That's part of what I was talking about as far as us monitoring that weather. Our radio system we share with Delaware County, Dublin, Hilliard, Upper Arlington, and Worthington. So all of our agencies can talk to each other fairly quickly. It's all on the same system. And with that, does anybody have any more questions?
I don't see anything in the chat box.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
I have a 911 Help Now device that I carry with me everywhere. The theory is that you press this one button and it will dial the nearest 911.
Okay.
I have wondered for some time if I should do a test with it. Is it okay to dial 911 and check that out and not be a nuisance?
I mean, we don't typically tell people to test 911. I just ask that if you do need to make sure that's going to the right place, just stay on the phone with the dispatcher and let them know that you've got a new device that you're setting up and you want to make sure it's dialing correctly. And we'll verify your location information, your name and your phone number, just to make sure there's no emergency. I would say as long as it's one time, it wouldn't be a big deal, but obviously we don't want a lot of people doing that frequently, because then we're tying up our 911 lines.
Exactly. I just wanted to make sure what the correct way was to do it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. If you do it quickly and as long as you stay on the line and just verify, then you should be okay.
Thank you.
I'm answering the
Go ahead.
I'm answering the next question. This presentation will be available on the Forever Dublin website at a later date once the recording has been edited. And you just need to look under the hub, past presentations. And I just wanted to put a plug in there too. If you go to the Forever Dublin website under the hub and go to past presentations, you can have video archived videos of the other past presentations, the American Smart Home, All American Smart Home, telehealth, how to talk to your doctor. All the presentations are listed there. And this one will be there as well in another couple weeks. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. I appreciate your education, your community service to us, giving this presentation. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm thrilled that we had 16 people on our call list presenter with the presentation today. So I think that we'll wrap up for today, and thank you again, Stephanie, and everyone who chimed in.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day.